Welcome to Artcasters, episode 357.
Yay! I feel like we should have.
It's like a special number, but it's not.
That's true.
I want to do every time I open the show. I just want to do the.
Oh no!
Oh no!
It happened.
No!
It's so funny. We were just predicting that Corey's mic would short out like right at the beginning, and it did.
I don't know why it's shorting out. Is it back? You guys might have to do all of the talking. I might have to buy
it. It's just every once in a while it just cuts out for some reason.
Yeah,
just for a brief second.
I'd just go forward, assuming that we can hear you, and then if I talk over you, which I do often anyway, but hopefully you'll just pick up on like that we're not hearing you. So
yeah. So let's say that I have just developed a filthy mouth, and I've added a filter on my mic that just randomly cuts out.
I love that. Yeah.
So if I begin waxing.
Oh,
waxing
shocking,
poetic?
Corey.
Is that what he
shocking. Said? I cannot believe you used that word.
Yeah, sorry about that. I can't help myself.
Was it waxing poetic or waxing your legs? What?
Did I cut out on the word eloquent?
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll see how this goes. We've already lost 2 viewers. They showed up and then left. They're like, I don't know what this is. Today we want to talk about how our art and careers have changed. But before we do that, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Corey Kerr, and you can find my stuff at coreykerr.com. I have Christopher says language. I have new laptop sleeves up in my store. So if you want to see those, you can go to coreykerr.com/store. If you want to jump into my email newsletter. Yeah,
Corey, shocking.
Go to
shocking language. Sorry.
Josh, where can we find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at joshuakemble.com. That'll give you links to my 2 graphic novels, Jacob's Apartment, which is a doomed romance about 2 polar opposite young adult roommates who are trying to find themselves, and in the process of going through grief and an identity crisis, both of them wind up falling for each other in a book that's similar to Ghost World if you put it in a blender with Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind. It's a good book, Jacob's Apartment. And then 2 Stories, which is my graphic novel about faith and mental illness. And you can also check me out on YouTube. And I also would recommend, I know Corey mentioned the laptop sleeves, but I'm going to keep harping on this. Mugs, you guys. We're artists, we're creatives. Most people who watch this are artists and creatives. And you guys should pick up mugs with Corey Kerr's art, because when you're drinking coffee to get that fuel or drinking, hot cocoa, or just drinking water, or drinking whatever you're drinking, what better than a Corey Kerr mug? I'm just saying. So
I'm always surprised with different people, because I heard Gary talking about how he's not a t-shirt guy, but he's a mug guy. And I'm kind of the opposite. I mean, I've got mugs, but I've got enough mugs, so it's like,
yeah. I think Gary actually meant that he mugs a lot of people.
Yeah,
he's like a secret mugger.
I've got this cool. This is the only mug I need right now. This is
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So, and that's basically what my mugs are for. I mean, every once in a while I'll drink coffee, but mostly the mugs are to hold my pens and stuff. But I would say, if you're a shirt person. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, but get a shirt, because I think the margins are better for Corey on the shirts. So
yeah, the margins are much better on the shirts.
And also shirts, like, what's wrong with Gary? T-shirts are never out of style. They will never die. And Corey's shirts look great. So yeah.
I imagine we'll probably be talking about shirts quite a bit today, since we're going back in time a bit.
And, yeah. Especially with Josh. Yeah.
Josh and I both started out in shirts, except he was good and successful, and that's what I was teaching myself.
I attempted to get into that shirt thing, and I kind of touched the surface a little bit, but definitely nowhere near Josh.
I wasn't able to buy a house on the income I made.
I have one that still continues to sell, and it's just like,
good.
and I know if I made more like that, but I just don't. I don't have I don't know. That's just not what I want to do, because it's like a pop culture based one, and it's one of those that I'm surprised that hasn't got, because I had some other pop culture ones that got taken down, and this one's still up for some reason, and people keep buying it. So it's good around Christmas. It'll bring in a good $100 around Christmas, and that's about it. Off of a like a $2 royalty.
Christopher says he wears 4X LT, so I have a hard time ordering shirts. I have 4 and 5X, I think, in there. So I don't know about LT, but
Christopher's like, I am so uncomfortably awesomely tall. It's a horrible thing to be just this amazing specimen of a person.
it's so difficult to be Greek god proportions. And
It's such a hard life. Anyhow, sorry.
Yeah, until I started into middle age and gaining normal middle age dad bod weight, I could wear a children's extra large at my size. So that was thinking. Anyway, Scott, where can we find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at my website at circworks.com, and guess what? I thought you might be able to guess. Okay. The latest issue, because you guys, every time I talk about it, you bring it up. But the latest issue of Young and the Dead is now on my website.
Yes.
Plus all the variant covers. So and those are limited. So, there's a little more of a premium price on those, because once those are gone, they're gone. So, but there's a new bundle with all 5 issues. There is single issue number 5. There's all the variant covers. So, and digital as well. So yeah, definitely go check out Young and the Dead on my website. And then other than that, you can find me at my YouTube channel, where I have my series Making Comics 101, which is basically the most comprehensive free course on how to make comics you will find anywhere. And like I said, it's free on YouTube, so definitely check it out. It's just packed with tons and tons of useful information. So if you want to learn how to make comics, you can start with that.
And if you don't find it useful, there is a money-back guarantee.
Yes, you get all your free money that you didn't pay for it back. That's usually what I say when people complain. Every once in a while, you get a hater, somebody complains, and I'm like, okay, I'd offer your money back, but since it was free, I don't know what to tell you, or something along those lines. It's just like, and I just hope that the feeling that idea that, oh, I'm being a little entitled sets in, but it probably doesn't. Like, you're getting this for free and you're complaining. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably not. I don't know. I don't think it's in most people's wheelhouse to be self-reflective when you just naturally suck. So
every once in a while, when I bring that up, a lot of people, it's funny because a lot of people, maybe they look at your subscribers and not necessarily my subscribers and not necessarily how many views I get. And then they think, oh, I'm just going to be a jerk. And then when I respond, they're like, oh, I didn't think he was actually going to read this or respond.
Yeah.
And then they kind of walk it back a little.
I think it's because it's like that separation where it's like people forget there's a human being on the other end of that, instead of just content. So I think once there's that reminder, you're like, oh yeah, I guess this is a person.
Yeah.
I thought I was just typing at a bot really angrily.
Oh man. Yeah. So how do we want to go? Do we want to go back in time? Talk about the beginning? Do we want to compare?
Why not?
Yeah. Let's get in the DeLorean. Let's do this.
How stuff changed. That's kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know whether like how what I proposed was, and just a little inside baseball, we kind of had some guests that we put some feelers out for guests and get them back. So this is kind of a last minute topic, and we just threw out some ideas, and we were all like, that might work. That might be interesting. So this is kind of a seat of our pants type stuff, but I think it's kind of a good topic, and it'll allow us to kind of go back in time, and because especially if you're new to art, or if you're wanting to get into it, just know that whatever you're doing now, assuming that you actually do this for a living and everything, it's going to evolve and it's going to change. And I don't think any of us probably predicted where we're at now. And I don't think any of us really do any, probably, I mean, I think our work has evolved so much that it's just so different than what we started out doing. So I just thought it would be fun to talk about how our artwork has changed, how our career paths have kind of changed, and so I don't know. We like Corey said, we can kind of go back in time and talk about that. I don't know. Does anyone want to go to first? I usually go first, so I prefer not to this time.
I will. I'll tease a little bit of mine. I found my old Flickr account that I had kind of abandoned in like 2000.
Yeah.
So
Flickr was the bomb back in the day.
Ooh,
that was a great way to get stuff.
I could probably find a blog post. I wonder if I still have that. I wonder if that's still up. What was it called? What was the blog thing called? Blogspot?
Blogspot?
I'm gonna see if I can find it.
Oh, Blogspot. Yeah, I wonder if mine's up there too. Crazy.
Yeah. So if while you're looking for that, I'll show you back in the day. This is like way back when. I don't even know if this counts, but I'm counting it. I dabbled as a can I share this? Yeah, we can go entire screen and go allow and then go here. So back photographer. So, and you can see all of the normal horrible cliche things that beginning photographers do, like look, I can leave the shutter open. Ooh. Anyway, or look, I can do like Ann Geddes and just color part of the picture and leave the rest in black and white. I can shoot through trees. so this.
Oh,
probably
Corey's
I guess
using language again. Sorry, guys.
Oh, really? I had a macro lens on it, so there's good stuff there. Yeah,
awesome.
So there's some of that. I don't know if this is the earliest stuff, but my comic, The Mixed. So this is a character from the first comic that I had. I bought into some really bad advice. I won't say who gave that advice because it's they're still around, but they gave really bad advice that you don't need to ink stuff. You can just darken your pencils. And so for the first 40 or so pages of that comic, they were all just Photoshop darkened pencils and then watercolor textures on masks. So that's kind of, if we're talking way back when, that's way back when for me. So yeah. Scott, did I give you enough time to find a blog post?
I'm finding all kinds of weird stuff that I don't. It looks like. Is this? I don't. Oh, there. I'm just finding stuff where people have stolen old artwork and are selling this clip art.
Oh.
Yeah, that'll exist.
I know. Yeah, and I didn't realize that. I guess I have a DeviantArt. I didn't even know I had a DeviantArt.
I should go look up. I think I nuked my DeviantArt. Oh, this is a truly. I've got a good one. Here is one of the first pieces of fan art. I got to share this again. Let's see. There we go.
Philip says, "Good evening, casters of art," and I like that. I think we should rebrand. Welcome to where we cast art spells.
Yes, we are casting art. So here is one of the original pieces of. This is why I don't do fan art anymore. There's so much about this that is so weird. How long ago was that? 9 years ago. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's some of that stuff. But yeah, so I guess if we're going back
wow.
storytelling wise, I graduated college and I tried to become a t-shirt artist probably about the same time Josh was not attempting to be a t-shirt artist, but actually was. I did not get a single design approved or voted for on Threadless the entire time, and they're all awful. I think you can still find them. I couldn't find them right now, but they were pretty bad. But I was, and so I was trying to do it just through like sort of what I knew about design, having taken one 100 level class in college, and that was like the totality of all of my training and effort. And that's why I got into photography. I gave up and I did that for a little while, and then I got into photography. And well, it would have been about 6 years later I decided that I wanted to start drawing. So yeah.
Nice.
So I don't know. Yeah. Scott,
I think we all had our crack at being a t-shirt artist, and only one of us was very successful at that. But I mean, well, I did find the I did find this website where they've kind of stolen some old artwork that I had, and they're selling it. So let me see if I can pull this up.
You're like, real quick, I'm going to talk about my past, and also I'm texting my lawyer to send a cease and desist.
Old stuff is, because this is like logos and stuff. But let's see. Okay, so how do I screen? I'm on my laptop here. So is it under settings? Where is screen share?
It's under present now. They changed it to the
under present. I don't even see present on. I don't see present. I see mute. I see stop cam settings. Oh, here, present. Yeah, sorry. Okay, here we go. Share screen. Okay, hold on. Okay, here we go. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
So this is a logo. Oh, here, let me go back. It's some. Oh wait, what the hell? Okay, so there's whatever this site is, it's taken a bunch of my old artwork that I didn't even know was still online. So this is an old logo I did. Let's see what else. There's 20 images. There's another logo I did. So I used to do a lot of graphic design, logo designs. Galaxy Burger.
Oh man, that's of an age. That those gradients. That was awesome.
How do I click out of this part?
Try going back.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. See if I can do that. Yeah. Oh, that's for a local radio station. I did that. So there's a little character in there. There's a little character.
Yeah, some of this is pretty rad.
Yeah. All right,
I think you just keep going
back. Yeah. Here, hold on. So this just must all be logo stuff that I did. That one. This actually I did for my son. He was on a soccer team, and I did that logo for him, and then I just posted it. Because just so you guys know, you don't have. I mean, if you do a cool design or something like that, you don't necessarily. It doesn't have to actually be for a client or something. You can just put it up there and. Let's see what else. Oh, I forgot some of this stuff. This stuff is so old. Let's see what the Arizona lottery. That one I did as a contest, trying to win a job doing something for the lottery. Let's see. This is so weird. It's so bizarre. There's a menu. This one I actually kind of like. Let's see if I can go back. Come on. I did this kids menu. I used to do all kinds of kids menus and stuff.
Kids menus were for a while there. Like that was one of the really nice like illustration gigs you can get, where you're gonna get to be creative and kind of think outside of the box.
Some boring website designs, or some more website designs. Yeah, I did. I forgot about that. I did a lot of website designs. Come on, you thieves! Why you? Okay. And there was a energy drink thing I did. That was actually a real client. I did a bunch of stuff for that energy drink, which I don't think it went anywhere. That was another website based on the energy drink, where we were doing like a kid's website.
The kids' website for the energy drink.
Yeah, I guess. I think they made a version for kids that wasn't too crazy for you or something. I don't know.
Rockstar Light.
Rock the boat. I forgot about this. This one actually might be on. There's a gallery page on my existing website. I think that one's actually up there. But let's see. I think there's one more. That might be it. So anyway, so there's some stolen artwork there. So how do I get out of this? Stop screen share. Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, kind of when I don't know how far back I want to go, but that stuff is all. I was kind of thinking about the evolution of kind of my business and my brand, because when I first went into, and when I started off, I worked for some companies and stuff, but when I first went into kind of business for myself and created and started doing freelance and stuff, it was all geared around character design, and that was back before everyone wanted to be a character designer. And believe it or not, there was a time where not everyone wanted to be a character designer, and not like nowadays. So it was sort of, I'm sure there were other people doing, obviously, but it was a little bit of a novelty, where my whole thing was that I'll design a character for you, and then we'll take that character, we'll put it on a website, we'll wrap it around a logo, and we'll just build off of that. But most of the logos and stuff I had some character. It started with some kind of character design. So, and some of that you can kind of see in some of those old examples I showed. So I was doing that for a while, and it was I noticed there were always like hints of what would come next. Like I've been kind of diving into some stuff for the YouTube channel. And one of the things was this children's show that I produced. And in that, I'm going to share some of the production designs and even leave a link to that video sometime in the future, to that children's video, or to that children's show. But one of the things when I created that show, the villain was a mad scientist, and there were all kinds of contraptions like Rube Goldberg-esque things and all that stuff. And that was before I kind of went into business for myself, because after the children's show nothing eventually became of it, other than we got to shoot a pilot and everything, and it was optioned, and then after that nothing happened. But a lot of that stuff ended up working its way into the design of, like, when I started CircWorks. And in the beginning, I had this thing called the Character Builder 3000, and I might even have a picture of it somewhere. I might be able to find it online. But it's kind of that same, like, have you seen the underground lair with all the pipes and everything like that? It was a lot of that, but it was like a little weird, like I said, Rube Goldberg conveyor belt thing that would spit out characters. And that was kind of that was back in the days when we had like flash intros. So it had this flash intro of this. It was like you guys know what an exquisite corpse is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like, this is an exquisite corpse. With anyone that doesn't know, it's kind of like, you separate like a person, like a head, body, and like legs or feet, and then you can kind of mix them up, so you can kind of create different versions of that. So it had this kind of animation of this, all these different characters, like it'd be a pirate or a knight in a suit of armor, and like all these different things, and it would kind of flip back and forth through all these different things, and it would spit out these characters and stuff. So that was kind of the evolution when I first started doing CircWorks. The slogan was illustration and design with character, and it had all this kind of weird stuff, and then this weird factory motif, and then that factory sort of evolved into the underground lair and the Mad Science Supply Company, and now that I'm moving forward, and eventually I'm going to transition to doing something a little differently, but still some of that is still going to carry over. So it's to me, it's interesting to kind of look where everything kind of began and how it evolved, and because there's little hints of things along the way, and I assume it's kind of the same with you guys. I'm sure, even though you're not doing exactly the same stuff as you used to do, I'm sure there's still inklings of kind of your interests and things like that that you can see from your older stuff, that you can see in the newer stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know if Corey was always drawing bugs and
No, there's some old bugs in there.
Yeah, I find that to be true for sure. Like just the way that not just like style wise, but like career wise as an artist, how like little interconnected things build when you may not have even seen them at the time, how they'd be advantageous to your career later on. And then, you end up kind of being informed and kind of evolving from like these weird little gigs here and there that you start doing. Some horrific experiences, some great experiences, but they all kind of inform what you become. And it is interesting to kind of look back on that for sure.
Yeah. So let me see if I can pull this up. So Adam Lohr had a comment here. So he was talking about rewatching some of my other older videos where I think that those are the videos where I was showing off some of my old comic stuff. That was back when I was like a kid. And he mentioned Cyberduck, which was like the first comic that I think it was like the first full length comic that I did. And I mean, it was all penciled and stuff, but I never printed it or published it or anything. And then actually, Adam, somewhere it's a little more recent. There's a video where I redesigned Cyberduck. Like I was taking some of my old concepts, and I'm like, if I did this now, what would it look like? And I kind of changed it around, and I actually kind of have a more recent drawing of how I redesigned it. And it actually looks kind of cool. I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, I mean, before doing this anything professional, I was, I'm sure all of us as kids were, drawing. Like I would just sit on the floor and, break out some copy paper, and I was making comics and doing all that kind of stuff. So where's Corey? Did Corey jump out?
I'm still here. I'm getting a weird shaking on my screen. So
oh no,
I'm trying to figure that out. There we go. That's better. Josh, take us through your humble beginnings.
Cool. So I'm gonna just stick to kind of professional beginnings because, like, I feel like like Scott was saying, we could all talk about those days of like laying on the floor and using like copy paper or like that. There's like this old I can't even remember what it was called. It was like paper that would feed from an old printer that had like little holes on the side.
Dot matrix.
Oh yeah,
dot matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my dad would bring home like reams of dot matrix paper from his work that they were just going to throw out, and I would just draw on the clean side of it. So you could like have these long, crazy like drawings because they had like they were on one continuous sheet that was just perforated. So anyhow, we could get into all that, but I feel like starting on the professional side would be good. So when I started out, initially I was just hungry for work and illustration work. So I was an illustration major. I was really uncomfortable with typography. And I remember having a really great typography teacher in art school, and just in that class, just not understanding kerning, just kind of hating type, like, and liking illustration, appreciating type, but just mainly just wanting to be an illustrator and take any illustration gig that I could get my hands on. And so that's kind of how I started out. Was I think my first professional illustration gig was for a company that made textbooks for universities, and they were like these like higher end, basically like course materials for schools. And so I started doing stuff like that, where it was a lot of weird cartoony stuff, a lot of it vector, and like utilizing Photoshop a little bit, but mostly vector art. That was like flat, cartoony children's stuff. And then I would just get random gigs here and there, just like anything I could get my hands on. And at first, the goal was just to get paid to do art. Like I was like driven to do that. And so I did that while I was in school, while I was still in college. And by the time I left college, I had enough to be able to just kind of go like full freelance, and just taking one little gig at a time and being really hungry, sending out tons of query emails to art directors and stuff like that. This is back in the day when you'd send out postcard mailers, all that fun stuff. And then, yeah, so that's kind of where I started out. And I think my style was much more, like I was trying to do like a cartoon modern kind of like children's style at the time. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how much further down the road we want to go till we go back around, but I know that like I was doing comics very early on too. So while all this was happening, I was also working on my true passion, which was my first comic, Numb, and I got like the Xeric grant for it, kind of on a lark. I still don't know how I got that grant. It was a big grant at the time, and that helped me basically self-publish, and I got help distributing that through Jeff Mason, who used to run a indie publisher that was fairly big at the time called Alternative Comics, which I don't even know if they exist anymore. But yeah, so I had my comic thing going, and then I had and in that I was hand inking it, but I had my friend do the interior lettering because I just, again, wasn't really comfortable with type and stuff like that. So I did the cover design and stuff like that. But yeah, so I was kind of like moonlighting, doing comics, and then taking whatever paid work I could get when I started out. And my style was very informed by like skateboard graphics. And then like on the other end, because I always had like kind of two styles. The other was kind of more of like a cartoon modern type style where like, you know, you skew perspective and you play more with shape and form and stuff like that. But honestly, just taking any paid, as long as it was drawing, I would take it. And that's kind of where I started out. And I remember being really hungry and like friends of mine struggling to get work at the time from school who graduated at the same time, who'd like send out a query maybe every week. And I was sending out like 30 to 40 queries a day just to try to get work. Because I wasn't going to take a job at the time. I wasn't going to take any job. I was just going to make a living doing art. So I was like, any job is not acceptable. I need to make a living doing art. Now, in retrospect, I think like any job is fine, but that was really helpful because it's like when the floor's not there, you work really hard as a freelancer. So that helped open up some options and stuff. But at the time, it was mostly just taking anything I could get that was paid work. And a lot of it was like small mom and pop companies, until I kind of ended up working for a place called Lakeshore Learning Materials that does educational art materials. And there's still a lot of good people who still work there. And I remember being in-house doing educational art and realizing like, I hate this. And that's like game boards and children's books and stuff like that. Anybody who's unfamiliar with Lakeshore Learning, just ask a teacher, because like teachers know Lakeshore. It's like a big company for like educational art. But yeah, so I remember finding myself at Lakeshore Learning Materials and working in-house and just feeling like office life wasn't for me. I didn't like the art style. And so I started moonlighting at night, drawing t-shirt designs that were the kind of art I wanted to do, hand inked, more like skateboard and punk rock style. And that's, I guess, where it kind of started off. So yeah, I think we lost Corey again.
No, I'm still here.
He's there. He's just not visual.
Oh, okay.
My thing. Oh my! I didn't realize my thing.
Oh, there you go. Gary had a. Oh, so go ahead. Sorry, Josh.
Oh, go ahead.
I said Gary had a question here. Let's see. I have a question for the Artcasters. Is there any sort of artwork you did in the past that you're a little nostalgic for, miss, and would like to try again someday? Well, I just kind of mentioned that I had done some redesign some of my old characters, and I've done that with a few of my old characters. I just go back and like I pull out old characters I drew as a kid, and like, if I was going to approach this now, how would I do that? So I've done a little bit about that, but as far as stuff I'm nostalgic for, that's actually that plays into kind of the new direction that I'm going to be heading into. It's a lot of stuff that I used to love as a kid, and trying to figure out why I love that, and if I was to do that today, how would that look, and things like that. So without getting too much into that, but that's kind of a big thing for me, and just kind of diving more into the process of actually creating stuff, like at least on my YouTube channel and stuff. So yeah, what about you guys?
Nostalgic stuff. It's interesting because a lot of my interests haven't changed, they've just refined. So it's like but there's a lot of things I did that I'm very nostalgic for. I would say like I used to do a lot of skateboard graphics, and that was incredibly fun work, and it was always fun to see the result where you had a skate deck with your art on it. And so I think like doing skateboard art, or like there've been like some things from like old illustration jobs that I miss. Like it was fun to do like a double page or a full page editorial illustration for magazines. Like that was always a really interesting challenge because you'd have like a day to knock this like crazy editorial out. There's just like odd things about the freelance life that that is interesting because you get a variety. Even as you start to hone and target your career, you get these little snippets of like tasting different industries. And so there are definitely times where I've dipped into things like making animation or video game assets, stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, that'd be fun to like take a crack at for like self-authored stuff. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I do feel like I get nostalgic for some of the older stuff, and I definitely miss concepting t-shirts. But for me, that's like a full-time job. Like if I were gonna get into the t-shirt game, I'd have to get really into it because I'm heavy on the concept part with those. And
Yeah, I'm wondering, Josh. I mean, I think you got into it such at the right time.
Yeah,
and I'm wondering I mean, I don't know that really exists anymore. And that, I mean, it's just seems so saturated because by the time I started trying to get into t-shirts, I couldn't tap into threadless at all, but I got into like T-Fury,
yeah, designed by humans.
Yeah, and some of those other ones, and it was like the shirt of the day. Like I got a couple shirt of the days that got picked.
Oh, T-shirt Woot, maybe.
And it wasn't T-shirt. I think at the time, I think it was T-Fury at one time. They were shirt. Of the day.
Shirt of the day. Yep.
Yeah. So I got a couple of those, and then
back in the day, like this is something people may not realize, but it's like there was an era of T-Fury where having a shirt up for like a day, you're at least walking away with a couple grand.
Oh yeah, it was a
at
big deal.
minimum. You know, like your base level is going to be like $2,000 for one day.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that. I mean, I was closer to maybe one by the time I started doing it, $1,000 maybe. But yeah, and I got a couple, and then. But the thing is that you could take anything that didn't get picked. There's like right now, there's so many other options, and you know. But yeah, I mean, like I've got one that continues to sell.
Yeah.
And if I had more of those, like I know people that just have tons of them, and it's just like you could just sit back and just earn crazy passive income off of all those. And I'm sure you still have shirts that sell, Josh, and that you're getting money from that you did like 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, I still get like a monthly royalty check. It's not much, but it's like, you know, it pulls in a lot. It has throughout the years. It's yeah, and that I didn't know how far we were going with the evolution, but I guess maybe I'll get into that too. So as I was working at Lakeshore, though, that like I learned a couple really important things. I started learning how to better use Illustrator. because when you work in house, you're gonna like pick up tricks. I had some really good mentors there that taught me shortcuts, and I BS'd my way into that job too because when I applied, they were like, "Do you know Adobe Illustrator?" And I had used it like once in one class for like, because this is like before they had digital art classes, and so it was like one class that went over all digital stuff. And so it would go over like, I think this is pre InDesign, so it was the like Quark or something. So it taught us like Quark and then like Illustrator and that kind of stuff. And so I really didn't know much about Illustrator at all, but I just told them I did. And then I had to test in house for the job, and I just BS my way through the test and figured out Illustrator. And then if I had a question about the program, I would just look for it online, or I would ask a coworker. And I, in about 2 weeks, learned Illustrator and learned shortcuts because, when you're in house and you're under crunch, like you need to know all those little keyboard shortcuts. And then from there, like I used my I enjoyed the job because it was drawing, but I realized like it wasn't enough to get paid to do drawing. I wanted to be paid to do drawing in traditional inks and stuff like that. And so that's where I got into t-shirts. I started submitting terrible t-shirt ideas to Threadless, partially on a lark because I liked their shirts. That was the main reason. And then I read up on it, and then I'd read comments and I'd participate in the forums and listen to people's feedback, and like that would help me evolve to where initially I'd like be like, oh, this would be cool on a t-shirt. Like that was my concepting. And then it moved from that to like realizing you need a why. Like you need a visual answer to like, well, why is the shirt yellow? Why is the why is it a zombie poster on a shirt, right? If you have an answer, like, or what is it about this poster that I'm drawing that's different than other stuff? And then also, what is this that's not just a square slapped on a t-shirt, right? Starting to use the t-shirt as like a canvas where you're not thinking about borders, you're using the shirt color as a color within the shirt. Just some basic t-shirt design fundamentals. And as I started picking up that feedback and stuff like that, that's when I started getting wins. I started really trying to nail it. And this is on the side from when I was working in house, doing educational art. And then that started succeeding, and that led to more and more t-shirt work. And like Scott was saying, there were like 3 other sites, and I would kind of parlay between those. And so most of my, like, I was able to quit and just go full-time freelance and do editorial illustration, book illustration, and all of it was in that style, that specific style I wanted to work in. And I think that's where I learned that lesson. And maybe this can tie back to you guys. The valuable lesson that I still carry to this day, which is if you want a style of work, put it on your website. If you don't want that a certain style of work, why would you promote it and put it on your website? Because that's all whatever you hate the most doing that you put on your website as a creative, you will get that as a job. So anyhow, Corey, I don't know. I moved a little forward, so why don't we, I guess,
move
forward in time.
You said a couple things that kind of stand out to me as I wasn't necessarily always doing, but I've done a lot of other creative artistic things. And I like the idea that you were saying of having like a reason for things to be there. And so I built some award-winning booths in event spaces for some big conventions like the North American Music Merchants convention that they have in Anaheim and in Nashville. And I kind of sketched that out on some printer paper. And then some of my coworkers and I built that out of reclaimed barnwood. We built like an old kind of dilapidated surf shack. And the cool part about that was probably that everything else was just like metal and plastic. And then we show up with like this rotting wood, and I instead of having carpet, like I bought like really nice like turf lawn, and I threw like silica sand down on everything. And everybody else's was just like metal and plastic and weird.
That
Uh,
that resonates with me so much, Corey, because I had similar experience like when we were shopping our children's show, and
yeah.
first I kind of had to we tried to hire, because we had 2 failed attempts at making these videos, and we had hired some prop places, and everything came back with just stuff they had laying around. And it was just garbage, and so I'm like, well, let's just figure out how to make our own, our own props. And we figured out how to do stuff out of foam and everything like that. But when we went to shop this, we went to this thing called NatP, which is basically where everyone goes and sells television shows. It's a big, kind of insider convention for buying and selling television shows. And it's basically, there's 2 floors. The top floor is all the big wigs, all the major production studios and all major television and movie studios, television networks and stuff. And there's all kinds of celebrities and stuff up there and all that stuff. Downstairs is where we were. And now the upstairs, they've got all these elaborate things like you would see it like at San Diego Comic-Con or something. But downstairs is just the basic modular booths. But we created this big rock booth, and everything it was really cool. It just stood out because it was the only one like that in that whole floor downstairs. So we got a lot of attention that way. But that just reminded me of that when you were talking about the sets and stuff that you used to do, or the booths and things you used to design, Corey.
Yeah. And then so I used to do I shot a lot of guitars. I worked for music supplier, and we would make all kinds of different things. And so I built an entire studio that was a modular studio, so I could turn it into like a garage basement, or I could turn it into like a living room. And I had all of these walls on casters, and then I would just flip them or slide them out of the way, or like piece them together. That was really fun. But then the other thing that Josh said that kind of jogged my memory is some of the most entertaining things I think I've done in the past were done sarcastically. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, The Other Guys. Mm-hmm. Anyway, there's one goes in and he's like, "This isn't hard." And he's like in a ballet studio, and he does this like incredible series of like dances, and they're like, "How do you know how to do that?" And he's like, there was a guy that we used to make fun of. And they're like, "You learned how to dance sarcastically?" He's like, "Yeah." So anyway, like I thought I'd pull this one up. This is one that I did sarcastically that I still kind of like today. It's kind of fun. I was just making fun of all the fan art mashups, and I tried to do as many mashups that don't make sense as possible. I accidentally made a couple of them make sense, but there's some. You
couldn't help it, Corey. You had to make some make sense.
I know. I tried really hard, but I do think Animal is maybe one of the best.
Animal.
Accidental one. Or I to this day I was looking.
Oh.
I would read Popeye the Barbarian. Like, I think Popeye the Barbarian would be a legit.
I'm looking for him. Where is he at?
Oh,
There's
Gary.
So much stuff going on.
Gary was asking if Corey's audio is occasionally going out for everyone else, and no, it's not. It's just we're censoring out Corey's foul language. That's what's been happening.
Yeah. So, yeah. So he's back behind. He's next to Goku Man at Arms and Dwight Schrute Superman. He's in between those two. So. Anyway, but yeah, that was kind of,
yeah.
That was kind of a fun one.
No, I think actually that brings to mind something that I learned, a valuable lesson that I learned that I carry to this day when doing t-shirts, because my first few ideas were also shirts I would never wear.
Oh, right.
And I remember learning this hard lesson of like, I know people say don't just design for you, but totally design for you. Like, when you're conceptualizing things, if the concept isn't selling itself to you, why would it sell to anyone else? It's a really important lesson to learn. And the other thing to learn was one of my first wins was my first win was like an overlapping life drawing t-shirt. And I made it because it looked cool. I was like doing this technique in my sketchbook where I would just draw different drawings on one continuous page that all kind of overlapped and interwove from like 20 different life drawing sessions all throughout the city where I just do observational drawing. And it was like this abstract thing. So at first it just kind of looks like this abstract pattern. And then you look at it and it's like, oh my gosh, it's a bunch of life drawings. But that you can only get away with once unless it's for multiple clients, which did end up happening. So it's like, because of the threadless win, a bunch of people would be like, hey, can you do that life drawing thing for me? Right. But that's a one trick thing. And so when it came to like coming up with other concepts, I had trouble until one day I was just thinking it would be hilarious if there was a shirt of like all the cliche supervillains in comic books, like, because they're like DC and Marvel have pretty much the same villains. There's all the cliche villains. They're in everything, like every science fiction, every comic. You could almost like list them all on a shirt. And then I was like, oh my gosh, has anyone listed them on a shirt? And I looked it up and nobody had done it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, well, that's the shirt I have to make. I'm going to make the League of Evil Cliche Villains. I can't even remember if that's what I called it, but it's been a long time. But anyhow, so I call my sister and we're going through, like, I'm like, what are all the cliche, like, we're talking about all the cliche villains and stuff like that. And I make a list and I'm like, you know what? Even if people don't like this, I think it's funny. So I have to make it. And what do you know? Like, the internet thought it was funny. And that was a valuable, I guess that's the big lesson. The big takeaway was make stuff that you can laugh. Like, if you're making humor, you should be cracking up about it too. If you don't find it funny, why would anyone else find it funny, right? If it's not something you'd want to wear, then why would you? I don't know if that makes sense. Like, but yeah, so that's something I carry with me today as an art director. When I'm working in a house or whatever, I'm always thinking, like, is this something I would want to buy, or I would want my mom to buy, or I'd want my kid to buy? If it's not something I could see them buying or me buying, like, you know, or like, why would I expect a client to want to buy it? You know?
Yeah.
So that was a really huge lesson in t-shirts. And the thing that was great about threadless was they didn't lie, because there was this era. Now it's a lot different, but there was this era where there were, you know, thousands and thousands of people who interacted on the forums who were just fans of the t-shirts. Like, they weren't all designers. And, you know, they really loved these shirts. And so, like, if they didn't like a concept, they didn't parse words about it. They'd just be like, this idea sucks. And so you'd put stuff up and you'd get like railed in the comments. And, but you'd also get all this valuable feedback and stuff like that. But I think that lesson of interacting directly with the market and seeing the market feedback and seeing what sold and what worked, and the fact that a concept that can answer itself, like, you don't have to, because you're not there to explain the t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
With every single buyer. And so it's like just learning that lesson of like pushing conceptually to those aha moments where it's like, that has to have been done, that should have been done, it hasn't been done, I'm going to do it. That was a huge thing that has evolved and helped my career now, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I remember just some of the most, well, I will say this though. Sometimes when I do that, my style is so weird that like no one cares at all. But back to Gary's question of, do I ever feel nostalgic to things? That's kind of related to what Josh is talking about. I tend to always do what I feel like doing, which is why I try not to do really long form projects is because if I'm working for a couple months on something, and then I'm like, oh, I long for the days of, whatever. I just make that thing, as soon as I'm kind of interested in that, which I don't think is good advice, but it is fun. It's terrible. It's terrible for a career, but it is entertaining. Like a couple months ago, and now I'm using this a lot on YouTube and stuff. I wasn't doing animation, and when I had done animation, it had become very like narrative. Like I was doing like short films and like stuff with dialogue. And when I first started doing animation, it was just weird. Like I just liked weird, just odd things. And so I had this image of like a laser rooster. And so I was like, I just want to make a laser rooster. And it was really fun. And I made a laser rooster, and nobody really cared. And it didn't do anything for me, but it was entertaining and I liked it. And that type of thing tends to, sometimes months or years down the road, somebody will be like, hey, that thing you made, will you make that thing for me, or whatever,
Yeah, that's Corey. That's a huge part of, I think, also growing your own thing is like the stuff that like Scott was even talking about, like a shirt that's still giving him income, right?
Yeah.
The stuff that does that tends to be the stuff you're into at the time or you care about. The stuff that you'll take for money as an illustrator or designer when you're starting out, that you probably aren't going to look back and care about, is the paid work that you didn't care about.
Yeah.
But like the stuff you do care about, a lot of that stuff will have like second or third lives, or maybe a whole website where people will have stolen your logo design.
Right. Speaking of stolen art, I got more. I actually did find my Flickr page.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Show
let's
it.
see. Okay, hold on. Let me present. Let's see. Share screen. You tell me if you guys can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So I guess this is some sketchbook stuff in here. Let's see. So that was this actually here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. That was actually a t-shirt design I did that didn't. You can see the t-shirt there. That didn't.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool, but that didn't get chosen for anything. But see this karate guy right here, this one next to it, somebody stole and just changed the head on it. I thought that was cool. And it's not even good, It's like the original wasn't even good. And then and here's some vector stuff. I forgot because I did get into doing vector stuff, early on in Illustrator. So I did a lot of these, but even this phone here, that's not a 3D drawing. That's all done in vector. Oh, that's like early. I'm kind of actually surprised that I could pull that off that early, because a lot of, that's early Illustrator before a lot of those tools are even there, but it's pretty hyper realistic. Cool. It's just all done in Illustrator.
Hey, Frank said he was gone designing his new FrankWorks Smart Labs logo.
Some of the stuff's the same stuff, but like the Looney Tunes, that actually, I did a lot of stuff for Looney Tunes when I worked for the
WB store, right?
Well, I didn't work for the WB store. We designed the WB store.
Yeah.
So I worked for an architectural firm, and we did a lot of we designed what those stores look like, and a lot of them had like the big giant Looney Tunes out front. And
those were cool stores.
Yeah, they were really cool.
They'd sell like animation cells and animation cell reproductions and stuff.
And there's some coffee. I did some coffee labels and stuff like that. And then that's the mural that's actually behind me right now. I did a lot of mural work. This one I really like. This Peter Pan one. I did that for a client. This Peter Pan.
Oh, that's cool.
It is rad.
And then there's just some other mural stuff, and then we get back into some of that stuff you already saw. But yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
That's rad.
It's just fun. I haven't looked at that stuff in so long.
It is weird to talk, like, even to backtrack some of this stuff, because when your career starts getting towards like 20 years in or something, it's like, it's hard to, it goes quickly, and it's funny. You'll think of different jobs that you did like 10 or 15 years ago when you're working on another job, and you're like, oh yeah, I learned this then, it's a really weird kind of thing. But maybe that can tie in a little bit to, maybe a good question would be like, from these early things, are there little like nuggets of inspiration that's like, are there little things that led to where you are now that you'd be surprised by, like at the time?
Well, like it's weird because like looking at those phones that I just showed you that were those hyper realistic phones that were and stuff that were done in Illustrator. I don't know that I would want to do like right now. If I'm sure I could do it, but it's like I don't want to do that, and I don't know. But I mean, back then it was like oh man, made it look so real. It looks like a 3D model, but it's all. And now it'd be like, man, I don't know if I want to do that. I could, like I said, I still have the skill to do it, but so a lot of that, I think a lot of it's also learning all this stuff so you figure out what you do want to do and what you don't want to do. I've done this, I can do it, I know how to do it. And it's like when we talked about like reference and stuff, it's my advice is to learn how to do it first, and then once you know how to do it, then and I'm not saying don't use reference in the beginning, but if you don't know how to draw cars, don't just rely on reference and tracing cars. Once you do know how to draw cars, it's like, then trace it to get be a little more productive and everything. So even though I can do these super hyper realistic things in Illustrator, I kind of, I've done that. I don't know if I want to do that again.
Yeah, I think that's funny. Just the lessons learned of like, you're right. Like, just because you can do it doesn't mean you want to do it. Another big wake up call for me was working on, I can't even remember. It was like a long project for a client where it was really well paying, and it was not my style at all.
I've done that. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, I'd rather work at McDonald's when I was drawing it. And that was like early as an illustrator, where you start picking up that lesson, right? Where it's like, I don't know, you got to take the fun stuff, or pursue the fun stuff. Like Scott was saying, just because even like the logo you do as a designer for your kids' soccer team or something, right? Like, even that, like, if you had fun doing it, why not put that on your website? It's like that Aaron Draplin advice.
Yeah.
Corey, that's looking really cool, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I don't know what I'm doing with it yet. I think it's going to be kind of a garbage in, garbage out thing, but yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of in a bit of a rut with this esoteric crumble flux series, and so I just started drawing weird stuff. So this is like weird stuff first, and I normally go from meaning first, but this one's a little bit backwards. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff with it, I think. But yeah,
it looks cool to me.
Well, thanks. It'll be available as a t-shirt and a mug soon.
I love it.
So yeah, well, we're at an hour. Should we wrap, or do you guys want to head into another area?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we kind of took a walk down memory lane, but we can, I don't know. Is there anything else that based on this topic that anyone wanted to touch on?
I have one thing that comes to mind, and maybe this can connect too, because Corey was talking about it kind of starting with like photography.
Oh yeah.
And I am thinking about just some things that have really helped me in my professional career that I wouldn't have anticipated. I kind of, to be honest, I lied about the Lakeshore thing without realizing it because it was so long ago. My first art job was doing production for a canopy company that would do these giant canopies. They're actually really cool canopy company. If you guys look them up, I think they still exist. Caravan Canopy. And so I'd go all the way to Compton, where they were located, in like I forget, it's not called Compton, it's in Compton, but it's like the industrial district.
What?
So I'd like
Torrance, like, or,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Anyhow, so I'd take like the metro there, and then I would work on just doing peeling ruby lith and doing color separation for them to be able to screen print, because they would screen print with these massive screens logos on the side of these canopies. And I hated that job. But I learned how to screen print in that job. I learned how to color separate. I learned how to do Pathfinder to make a solid shape. When I was doing, I learned how to kind of deal with logos, pull them apart and rebuild them. And so there's things that I learned there, like the Pathfinder tool, that to this day is like my best friend when it comes to working. Or the aesthetic of screen printing for t-shirts was easier for me to understand because I had worked for a place that did screen printing. So when people were talking about screen printing, or you're setting things up for back before they had digital, and you're setting things up for like a line screen and stuff, you know what you're doing. But even further than that, there's other weird things like working at an AM/PM where dealing with angry, weird customers and learning how to do customer service and cashiering has helped me with my professional career. There's a lot of like weird little things that have really assisted where I'm at now. What do you guys like? Do you find like any old, like it's funny to me, I'll have days now where I'm like, this is interesting. This is something I learned how to deal with back when I was a cashier at a mini mart, like, are there things like that have helped you guys through your career too? Like sort of unexpected things that apply to your art. Like Corey, like you were mentioning the photography, that apply to your art now. Yeah.
For me, like when I was first so when I first started my company, there was, times where I didn't have work. So I need extra work. So I did a lot of construction and stuff, working for my ex brother-in-laws and my ex father-in-law, just doing whatever construction kind of grunt work and stuff. But I think a lot of that, it was weird because at the time, you just like, when I first started doing construction stuff, I'm like, how do people build like houses and stuff like that? Because like my ex brother-in-laws, they would know how to build a house.
That's amazing.
It's like how do you know that? But the more I started hanging around and doing different things like that, I started to learn stuff, and that really drove me to do a lot of the projects. Like, now I've got bookshelves and big giant entertainment centers and things in my house that I've built, and just knowing how to do that stuff. And a lot of that does come in, like when I'm building sets and stuff for like redesigning the underground layer and all that kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of that construction knowledge came into, really helped out and taught me how to do that. I'm still not like I kind of, when I build stuff, I'm probably not doing it the right way, but I can make stuff look good. I may not be doing it the right way. A lot of it's kind of self-taught, but it's just using my creativity to figure out how to do this, but yeah, a lot of that, but I just learned, doing construction and stuff help with, a lot of the creative stuff that I do.
That's awesome. And I could see that even with back planning, where it's like when you're constructing things, like you have to really think about the process and stuff. It's like, the process of design, at least, is very much a construction project. So kind of, I don't know, it's to me, but that is interesting you mentioned that, because I've always been in awe of your ability to fabricate stuff. Like your booth setup is incredible. I didn't know about the construction thing. That's interesting.
Yeah, kind of along those same lines. I did a lot of land. Well, I don't know if a lot, but I did, several years worth of landscaping and aquascaping and working on farms and things. So like, as a kid, I got sent off to my grandpa's farm, kind of south of Death Valley near Fresno. And it's not a pleasant area of California. And I would spend 8 to 10 hours a day by myself weeding fields of cotton and sugar beets and different things. And I've noticed that a lot of my, at least aesthetic, if not subject matter, has a lot of natural patterns in it. Like I kind of learned to notice certain things that I like teach my students now. Like one thing is I've noticed things will look more professional if you have lines that join other lines and get thicker at the joints. Like if you're trying to intend to make something look like it will hold something like weight, then those things will get thicker. And that comes from I was very bored, and you would look at like leaves on the plants and I would see like how the stem of the leaf would attach to the main part of the branch of the tree would attach to the trunk or whatever. And there's certain patterns that when like nature intends for something to be a solid joint, it does something different than if it intends for that to be a weak joint. For example, like when a seed on a dandelion attaches to the main sphere in the middle of that dandelion, it actually tapers to a point because the intention is for that to break off easily. But everything else, the branch would do the opposite of that, where it expands and gets wider as it joins the trunk, because the intention is for that branch to be able to hold weight. And so I think spending a lot of time in the middle of nowhere in like miserable, hot, like wading through like ankle deep treated sewage, in the non-food categories of the fields that I was weeding and stuff. And then looking at like how clouds work, or, how like plants work, or what makes, why can I see the trough of this dirt and the rays of this dirt? And like, you kind of start to just understand a bit of like light and shadow. So I'm sure because everybody always, or at least Josh and Scott, will say, oh, you learned how to draw so fast or whatever. But I think, I started when I was 32. I dabbled here and there in different times and places, but like I had a professional understanding of composition from videography and from from photography and from graphic design, but also like as a 12-year-old spending a lot of time on the farm and still being like a very visual person, like just noticing those types of things, I think has definitely impacted like the way that I ink and the way that I do those, there's just a lot of like lessons I learned from how God makes stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, and then digital artists today, if you are not trained from a traditional background, might not understand the value of understanding how like life actually works, because all digital tools are trying to emulate traditional tools, and traditional tools are trying to replicate observational drawing and plein air and nature and still life and those types of things. And so if you can get back to like, the veins in a leaf, or the why a butterfly's wing, has the structure that it has. I've always been fascinated by those types of things, like butterflies or insects or whatever. Like a lot of them will fly a specific way, and their wings will be tapered or shaped to like adapt to that type of flight. Like a butterfly intentionally flies erratically because it's not fast. And so it's really hard to gauge for predators of butterflies where it's going to be. And so they will take off instead of just taking off straight or taking off straight forward. They'll take off and they'll be all over the place. And that's a defense mechanism. And so their wings are really bulky and wide so that little tilts of those wings can change direction really quickly. Whereas if you look at like a dragonfly, which has a much more like speed straight forward or vertical or diagonal change, but not backwards, they have a much more tapered, lengthy wing because they're going for velocity rather than for erratic nature. And so I always just kind of thought, like, just observing how things work has kind of informed what I draw, but also how I construct things in my mind. Yeah.
I love that. Do you guys find let's see. So is it weird to you guys, your art journey? Like when you look back on it, do you find it unusual where you've arrived compared to where you were heading? Like just, I don't know if that makes sense, but that question.
Yeah, the question that I keep pondering is what it's going to look like years from now, especially with all, with the AI and stuff being so, just we're on the cusp of that right now, and what everything's going to look like moving forward. And I'm trying to take steps to make sure that I don't become irrelevant in that. So but you do have to, there's been so many changes in my career that I've had to adapt and pivot and change directions and things like that I just figure whatever that next thing is, I'll be able to find my way. But I think a lot of that, talking about things you've kind of learned along the way. I mean, I think knowing that I can make changes and evolve and things gives me a little more confidence kind of moving forward.
I will say it's interesting you mentioned that, because one thing I'll mention just as an art director that I've noticed that's a huge difference between like a junior designer and a senior designer. A junior designer gets something challenging. In general, this is just my general experience. A junior designer will get something challenging and crazy and outside of the box, or something they aren't sure if they can do, and they'll kind of get frozen by it quite often. Whereas a senior will just be like, okay. And the senior doesn't always know they can do it. But the thing about as you gain experience, at least I've noticed this with people I've managed and with myself, it's like as you gain experience or you start doing more outside of the box things, like some of the weird stuff we've mentioned, that we've done, you do gain more confidence in your own ability to execute things that you aren't even sure are in your ability. I don't know if that makes sense.
What's that quote? I try to think of 5 impossible things before lunch or something. It's from Wonderland, Alice in Wonderland. But yeah, I think there's a lot to that. Like if you have a history of solving things that feel impossible, then when you come across something that feels impossible, that's a familiar feeling. And you're like, oh, okay, I might not know the answer right now, but I know that I've been here before, like I'm aware of this area.
Yeah. And you get better at reverse engineering too, where you're like, okay, well, how did I solve this the last time? Okay, let's just break it down. What's step 1? Right. Yeah. So anyhow, sorry.
Yeah. I've got to do a video on something that I've been talking about in class recently, because I think I've made some huge assumptions that I realized were a blind spot for me in teaching. And it's that reverse engineering is a very intricate and layered skill set. And just telling people look at it. And I've even said look at it and figure out what they're doing that you're not doing and what you're doing that they're not doing, and kind of, reverse those. I spent I spent about 90 minutes this week with some students just saying, like, okay, let's just spend the next however long just talking about contrast.
Yep.
Right. And they're like, okay. And so we spent like 30 minutes of that conversation just talking about value contrast, and then another 15 minutes just talking about saturation contrast, and another couple minutes just talking about complexity versus simplicity, and another few minutes talking about atmospheric perspective, and another few minutes talking about color temperature contrast, and another few minutes talking about line weight contrast, and it's like, and they were just like, it was blowing their mind that you can spend so much time talking about one of the things, one of the basic things that's in like the non-designer's design book, or that you teach in a 100 level like class. And so it reminded me of, I did an experiment recently, a semester or two ago, where I had a really rare opportunity where there was a class that for whatever reason started with 5 people and then 2 of them dropped. So there was just 3 people in the class. And so I was like, hey, I'm just going to do deep dives. And they're like, all right. And so I would spend like a week of classes, which is a little over 3 hours, just going over one basic principle. So I'm like, okay, today we're just going to talk about repetition. Today we're just going to talk about proximity. Today we're just going to talk about alignment. And it was surprising to me that I was able to speak for 3 hours on each one of those things, but it was really surprising to them to be able to be like, oh, okay, this is what you're talking about when you say, like, look at professional work and break it down and try to figure out how they did it. Because that's what I had trained myself to do. I don't think most people like watch cartoons and they watch them like frame by frame to try to figure out like how it works, like, but I do, and so I've realized in the last few months that was a blind spot in my teaching of, like, when you and I say reverse engineering to another professional, they know what you're talking about. When you say that to somebody who's just starting out, they don't have,
they're like, reverse what? Yeah.
They don't know the understanding.
Yeah. It's almost like looking at a cake. If you're a baker, you'd be like, oh, they used this kind of stuff. Right. And like, you could reverse engineer food if you cooked a lot of food, but like, if you're somebody who knows nothing about the ingredients, you're just like, this is magic. What are you talking about? Like,
right. Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. Or even, like Scott's in-laws being able to look at something, like, I look at a piece of furniture or a house or something and I'm like, that is a wall, that is a door, right? But when my dad does it, he looks at it and he's looking for like how they countersunk the nails and the technique that they used on the the router, that they were doing to round off the corners, and what type of miter joins they're using, and stuff. And he can reverse engineer a piece of woodworking, having decades of experience doing that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge skill.
Also, I know this is a tangent, but tying into what you're saying, there's a huge value in, and honestly, I think this will tie into like all of our past art in general, to having a curiosity and an interest in how things are made. Like Corey was saying with the butterfly, right? Where it's like, it does not hurt you. It will never hurt you to have curiosity about things. In fact, it informs you a lot about things. And even as silly as it is, like t-shirt concepts will start coming out of nowhere. If you're reading a lot, you're informing yourself about a lot of things, you're asking how things are made or how they're built or what's behind it, you're breaking things down. That's a skill that is graphic design,
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, Corey, but that is a good point, because I will forget that too. I had a moment a couple weeks ago like that with a junior designer where I was like, oh wait, yeah, you haven't tackled these big things before, so this is really like heavy, right?
Right.
Yeah, but which is interesting, because it's like, when again, like the more seasoned you get at this, the more comfortable you get with, like Scott was saying, changing lanes, switching gears, because we've been through I mean, entire software platforms that were the top platform that don't exist anymore,
Yeah. Or another thing that I've noticed is if you can stoke your curiosity and you can get to the point where you naturally are curious and your brain knows that is an itch that you will scratch, like it grows, and I make fun of my students because like if you grew up in the 80s or before, like I remember this comic and I can't remember who did it, but it was like pre search engine, and somebody said, "Oh, I thought of a thing that I want to know," and his friend said, "Oh, that's a shame," and that was the end of the comic. It was just like, and nowadays, like you can just say words into the air, and a smart speaker will deliver you information from space.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people are at an advantage necessarily when it comes to curiosity to have like all available human knowledge at your fingertips, like in a little distraction rectangle in your pocket, because
by the way, that's a very Werner Herzog way of describing in the distraction rectangle.
But I do think having had the experience of like a question that I couldn't answer, that like I searched for years to find the answer for it. Not like I was spending like hours every day looking for it, but like anytime I would come across a book that may have that answer, I would jump to the index. And I remember I literally had to travel to the other side of the world for this particular thing. I had a question about something when I was 16, and I found it in a book in Glasgow when I was 20. In a library in Scotland. And it was like, it was such a huge thing that landed with me at that point in time. And it was just an answer to a simple kind of curiosity thing. But nowadays there's just, you just do that and whatever. And so I wonder if curiosity has been dampened by instantaneous gratification, because there is something deeply rewarding in like in a fulfilling search of those types of things. Because I mock my students by saying like, I just said half a dozen things that you don't know and none of you care. Like, don't you want to know things that you don't know? Like, don't you see a piece of information or a skill or a fact or something and say, that's a thing I don't know, and get excited and go chase it? And they're kind of like, no. Like,
but also people who aren't curious also may not be graphic designers, like, or illustrators. Like, and there's that too, like, because I think in order to be an artist, you have to have curiosity. And I think that's driven all of us a little bit. And also, to be honest, Scott, starting out, just, I guess, the last bit of nostalgia. You remember being like this young, hungry artist, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how did you close? Maybe we can just talk about how we closed the gap from being a young, hungry artist who's desperate for anything, for any work, any paid work that's art.
Yeah.
And honestly, by the way, you will never feel as good for probably your entire life about paid work as you do your first paid art job. Like, even if it's the worst paid art job. But yeah, like, what was fundamental to like closing that gap between being the artist that wanted work and actually getting work?
I don't know, because I think, with few exceptions, I think everyone kind of goes through that journey where it's kind of like whether it's a rite of passage or whatever. Everyone had to do those jobs and stuff they didn't like, and I think it's getting through that and just keep pushing and pushing until and the more you do that, the better you get, and obviously the goal is you get to a point where I can tell you, like last year, was a good year for me, and even I don't know. I find that right now I'm in a position where I just turn away work because it's just like, that's a lot of work and I don't want to do that. I can, and certain things you see red flags, and it's just like, especially like if somebody wants a children's book, which I don't get a lot of requests for that anymore, but every once, I mean, just that's just a lot. And comics too. Like I don't, I'm working on my own comic. I can't draw comics for other people. And plus comics are a lot of work and I do not want to do somebody else's comic.
Yep.
So it's just like, I don't even ask what it pays, which it probably isn't much, but even if they had a ton of money, it's just like, I just don't want to do that. I kind of want to work on my own stuff, and it's nice to be in that position. But yeah, it hasn't always been like that. And it's like, I don't know if I've kind of veered away from the actual core crux of that.
Well,
question,
it's just more of like, how you close that gap. But I think that is kind of an answer of like the rite of passage.
Yeah, it's just kind of an evolution. You just keep, like you said, I mean, and you could look back and I think the advice you gave earlier, Josh, is that, if you're putting, in the beginning, I would put whatever in my portfolio, anything that I did, because it's like, oh, if I have all these different styles and things that like, then it broadens the scope. When in actuality, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for niching down and doing what you want to do. And when people can look at your stuff like right away and say, I get what this person does, and I want this person to do that for me, then there's no question. Like, I mean, because you've all had the thing, like every once in a while, there'll be somebody who just like, he's an artist, so he can draw this for me, and not even knowing what kind of an artist you are, but I think the more that you put out the kind of work you do, and if it has a certain look and a feel to it, then people will come to expect that from you, and that's the kind of work you can continue to get doing. I mean, continue to do. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I will also say, like, Corey's statement about curiosity is good, and also I think a little bit of stubbornness doesn't hurt if you want to be a creative, because it's a hard thing to get those first few gigs, and quite often it will feel like those job interviews when you're a kid and you first try to get a job, and people are like, well, you have no experience, and you're like, but I could have experience if somebody would hire me to
well,
so
create your own experience.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess that's what I was saying, is like, you need that persistence, because it'll feel like that for a bit with creative when you're trying to get in there and crack it, and I think just having a bit of a stubbornness about it would help.
Yeah, and you don't need to wait around to get client work and stuff. Just start creating your own projects, and then put that in your portfolio. Create the stuff you like and you want to do, and put that in your portfolio. And I learned that a little later than I wish I had, you know?
No, I mean, like, even with the threadless thing, that was a good lesson for me too, was like, even if I came up with designs I really liked that didn't win, because I felt good about them, I could shop them and sell them to somebody else. Like, you want to make, you also just want to make work you're proud of. Like, and so, but I will also agree with Scott on that, because quite often, especially if you're creative and you're getting into it early on, you're going to find that early work is not going to be, it may not be the stuff that you want in your portfolio. So like, if you're making your own personal stuff, that's awesome. That's exactly what you want to make. That'll generate the type of stuff that's awesome. So good point, Scott. Cool. Did we deviate too much, Corey?
No, I think we're good. But I think we've hit it. Let's call it. So if you want to see this or anything else I'm doing, you can go to coreykerr.com. I've got stuff available now, so you can see some of the more stranger and intricate ink work that I've kind of moved into lately. It was fun to kind of look through the different eras. There was the digital coloring era and the darkened pencil era. And anyway, I've moved back into kind of an era that I've really enjoyed, which is just more detailed inks. And I'm really proud of the stuff that I've made recently. So if you want a t-shirt or a mug or a laptop case or a flag or a couple other things, then head over to CoreyKerr.com. That's CoreyKerr.com. And if you want to get on the email newsletter, make sure that you are notified and that the billionaire algorithm doesn't decide what you get to see, but you get to decide what you get to see, then jump on my email newsletter, and you will never get an email more than once a week, and most of the time less frequent than that. So, and that'll have new artwork that I do, as well as video essays and sometimes podcast kind of explaining some of the meaning behind it. So you can check that out at CoreyKerr.com/email. And Josh,
Awesome.
how about you? Where can we find your stuff?
JoshuaKemble.com and bookstores everywhere. Jacob's Apartment and 2 Stories, my 2 graphic novels. Please order them if you haven't, and also let us know in the comments, after this too, like what your guys' old art journeys were like. What was the old use version of art, or if you're starting out, like maybe think about that. Like maybe in 10 or 20 years, you'll be looking back and going, it was interesting when I did this weird thing or worked in this different style. Scott, how does everybody keep track of this wacky channel? But before that, where can they get cool comic tutorials and also a cool new comic?
Okay, yeah. So speaking of that new comic, that is the newest addition to my online store. I do have the latest issue of Young and the Dead available there. If you didn't get it on the Kickstarter, now you can get it from my website, as well as for a limited time until they sell out all the variant covers. One of those was done by Josh. One of those was done by Corey. And there's some other awesome artists in there that did some really cool covers as well. And those are available on my web store.
Mm-hmm. Mr.
And also
Hodges, Russ Leach.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely check those out. And then let's see. And other than that, I got a YouTube channel where I have my series Making Comics 101, which will tell you everything you need to know about making comics. It's the most comprehensive free course that you'll find anywhere, and it's on YouTube on my channel. So definitely check that out. And like Josh had alluded to, this show, the Artcasters, we do the show every single week. But it's a little strange if you're not accustomed to it. But we each take our turn hosting, so it'll rotate between each of our channels. Sometimes it can be on a different day. Sometimes we have different guests. Sometimes we don't have any guests, like today. But so if you want to know, for one, when the next show is gonna be, if you want to know whose channel it's gonna be on, if you want to know who the guest is gonna be on, if we have a guest, easiest way to know that is just to join our mailing list, and we'll send out usually an alert about 30 minutes before we go live, letting you know that we are going live and whose channel it's going to be on, so you know right where to find us. So definitely join that mailing list, because we don't spam you or anything like that. That's all. The only purpose is just to let you guys know when we're going live. So that's the best way to know.
I love it.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Let us know in the comments about your art journey, and we will catch you guys next week.
And thanks to the chat.